Christmas is upon us, and we have the perfect gift that you can give someone, or perhaps even gift yourself, and that is Head Stuff Plus. You can listen to our extra bonus content thanks to MILF.
Yes, and everybody else's.
And how do you do it? I'll tell you how you do it. You go to headstuffpodcast.com/Xmas and you get our extra content that you might be missing out on. You can sign up for 6 months or 12 months.
6 months a bit mean, I'm not going to lie.
And then that's your Christmas presents done.
That's a good present.
Get on it.
A pod person will love you.
Meaningless stuff. Why do we gift so much meaningless stuff? Tired of generic gifts and hollow trends? Shutterfly allows you to create meaningful photo gifts for your family and friends. Whether it's a cozy fleece blanket for grandma, a stunning canvas print for mom, or a mug to make dad smile. Enjoy 40% off with code MAKE40 at Shutterfly.com and make something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
The G-Spot is sponsored by playblue.ie, Ireland's favourite adult store, and we are running an amazing competition this season where you can win over €300 worth of my Playblue picks. Keep listening to find out more. Today we're joined by Dr. Nicola Fox Hamilton. She is a cyberpsychology lecturer and researcher. I managed to say it that time. It's a mouthful, but very impressive. I love the word cyberpsychology. What does that exactly mean?
So it's basically the psychology of how we interact with technology, how it affects us, how we interact with each other through technology, all of those kinds of things. So it's a lot of the activities that we're doing on a daily basis, as well as some different ones, things like online therapy, VR, AI, like it ranges from consumer psychology to online dating and from radicalization online to how we communicate through WhatsApp. So it's very broad.
Yeah, and it's changing all the time as well. I suppose so rapidly, even when you mention AI there, and we're definitely going to get into online dating. But even in the world of sex, like we're seeing just such a change even, I suppose, over the last, decade and how people probably, we have so many more apps now.
Yeah.
Casual sex apps, dating apps, kink apps.
Yeah.
We have I think there's virtual reality porn now people can use. It's probably growing all the time.
Yeah, and the internet even completely changed the way that people access porn and the amount of it they get access, the kind of porn they get access, so much different stuff about how everything has changed.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose if we can rewind before you were doing all of this sex education when you were younger, did you get much?
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
We got some. I remember, I think it was the end of primary school. So 6th class, we got some stuff around puberty.
Yeah.
And it was very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I was in an all-girls school, so we weren't even mixed.
Yeah.
I remember little tiny moments from it. I remember there was a video, which you could probably find online now, I'm sure. And it described how a boy's voice changes. And it was so funny because it went, it had a boy talking and it went, oh. It was just
it's like whale noises.
And then in secondary school, we had some organisation come in that I think was Catholic, but I'm not 100% sure. And they were, as far as I remember, reasonably good for the time.
Yeah.
So this was early 90s.
Okay, yeah.
But it would have been 5th or 6th year by the time they came in. And at that point, quite a lot of people were already having sex. And the one standout thing, a couple of standout things from that were Mars bar wrappers are not condoms.
Oh my God. Did people think they were?
Oh my God. Mars bar.
Yeah. And then the other thing was, which at the time I thought was hilarious. And now actually I'm yeah, you know what? That kind of makes sense. They're girls are like electric cookers and boys are like gas cookers. Boys, you can turn them on right away, but girls take a little while longer to heat up.
I love that. I love that they were using that.
I actually think that was kind of cool.
Then, yeah, because what I've been saying in schools for the last few years is, the female body, let's say, is a bit more like an oven and the male body is a bit more like a microwave.
Yes.
So same idea, just different.
Yeah. So it's been going around for a while.
Yeah, but I like it. It's actually a good analogy is analogy the word, metaphor?
Yeah.
It's a good, I think things like that can stick with you, like that stuck with you all this time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So things like that definitely can be helpful. Okay, so you had a bit, it wasn't amazing.
And that was it.
But that was
like a class in 6th class and then a class or like a kind of a workshop-y thing for a couple of hours in secondary school. Okay. That was it.
Yeah, I know. Very little, really.
Very poor. And of course, it was entirely heteronormative, like no mention of anybody else.
No.
It was basic.
Yeah, probably no mention of the clitoris either.
Oh God,
no. She didn't exist.
No.
She was erased from the
I don't remember any mention of pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't really, it was more about not getting pregnant, avoiding STDs, not being peer pressured if you weren't ready, which was good.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, it was sort of like, don't do it if you can. And if you do, here's some things to think about, but we'd prefer if you didn't.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And also, like I said, it was probably too late for a lot of people.
Yeah, it usually is a bit late when it happens like that because everyone's developing at a different rate. And even puberty-wise, like people can get their periods as young as like 8.
Yeah.
Which I know is probably on the younger side of things.
Yeah, but it happens. I mean, I know a lot of people had theirs before we went into secondary school at all.
Which probably was really scary and,
a lot of parents wouldn't have talked to them. No. My mom gave me a book.
Yeah,
she just left it on the desk.
I got a book as well. Yeah, I read through it recently. It was there was some nice bits and some bits that were didn't age well. Let's put it that
I wonder do I still have mine somewhere?
I do have mine, and it's so funny because it's up on the bookshelf with all the books about like kink and like the ethical slut and all these titles, and then there's like girl talk. This tiny skinny book.
It might have been the same.
There was a girl talk and a boy talk one.
Okay.
Yeah. I never saw that. I'd actually like to see the boy talk because the girl talk, there was a lot about boys in the girl talk one. Okay. Like again, the clitoris wasn't mentioned. Sorry, I've mentioned the clitoris so many times already in 5 minutes, but that's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, because it's like it doesn't exist.
It's a vital part of anatomy, and it's just like who?
Yeah.
Who is she? So she wasn't mentioned, and also it was just quite hard on girls. Like there was some really questionable comments about single mothers and about girls flirting with boys and how they hurt boys' feelings and stuff. And you're like, I'd love to see the boys' book.
Yeah.
But look,
mine didn't have any of that. Mine was really around periods and puberty.
Okay, just the physical bits.
Yeah, my mom wasn't getting into any of that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And the Mars bar rapper, it's so funny because again, the same stuff gets repeated. It's just like a different time because it was there was a kind of would you say an urban myth or whatever. Or when was I in secondary school? So 2005 to 2010. And it was about Tato packets.
Yeah, I think that might have been another one they said actually even. Yeah. And I was just like,
like on one hand, like yeah, exactly, ow. But also like one part of me now that knows more, I suppose, about I suppose disparities in society. I'm like, God, there probably are some people who use things as protection that like, they shouldn't be, and condoms should literally just be handed out in the street for everyone, contraception, etc., which is free, thankfully now, hormonal contraception. But then sometimes, it was just clueless kids, or not being able to get access to condoms.
Well,
maybe.
they weren't on sale when I was that age.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I was 18 in 97?
Yeah. I'm saying 95. I don't know why.
95. I was 18.
Okay, right.
Like I remember going into the Virgin Mega store,
yes,
and they had condoms in there, and that was like, wow.
That was like
risque and groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Like stuff just wasn't around. Like it was all very new at that point, and things were only starting to open up a little bit.
When you think of it, like.
Yeah. And then I went to the UK. One of my first summers in college, I went over to live in London, and you could go to the doctor and they give you free condoms and free birth control and stuff. And I was just like, what?
Whoa, whole other world.
Yeah. And there was no shame around it and stuff. Yeah. Like it was, very different.
And they're right next door to us, but just such a different history and culture there, I suppose.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, thank God we're in a different place now, because thinking of that is just even being able to get condoms, it seems these days just so basic and, prevent STIs, prevent, if you don't want to get pregnant. Yeah. But Yeah, anyway, that's a whole other podcast episode about just the control. They just wanted, particularly women under the thumb, basically,
Very
not
much.
able to make these choices.
I mean, when you think about it, when I turned 18, the last Magdalene laundry was still open.
Oh my God. Yeah. Seriously. When did the last one close?
96.
Okay.
96, so it was pretty close. Sinead O'Connor was in one of them near me in school, I think.
Really?
Briefly, for a short while.
Oh
in
my
Highfield.
God. That's one of the most, I think, shameful parts of our history, isn't
Unbelievable,
it? It actually gives me chills thinking about it. But we'll move on. We don't.
I could talk about this all day.
Yeah, that can be another episode another time. So we're going to go into some dilemmas, and I think with your expertise in cyberpsychology, these are going to be very relevant, I hope, to what you do, and you'll be able to give, some probably, again, kind of an expert lens on it, right? So I'm going to start with this one. So this is about, it's titled, I hate that my ex's new partner posts pictures of my kids online. This is an interesting one because it's not explicitly, let's say, about sex, but I think it brings in a good conversation about consent, about relationship, even co-parenting. So I'll read it out. Hi, Grace Alice. I'm 35 and I have two kids aged 5 and 8 with my ex. Things have been mostly civil between us since we split, but recently his new partner is really, really getting to me. She has a pretty active Instagram account with a few thousand followers and has been posting loads of pictures of our kids online. I've always been uncomfortable with the idea of my children being shared on social media, especially when it's out of my control. I've never posted them on my own accounts because I believe they should have privacy and the choice over how and when they appear online when they're older. So when I saw these pictures popping up on her feed, it really didn't sit right with me. Everything she does with them seems to be basically a photo shoot opportunity to her. And she once shared a funny, and funny is in inverted commas. I was like, what are they called? Inverted commas. A funny, I say bunny ears, which is definitely the unofficial term. A funny story about how my 8-year-old threw up with the shock after getting her ears pierced. Poor thing. I tried to have a calm conversation with my ex about it, explaining that I don't want the kids and their lives being put out there to strangers, but he dismissed my concerns, saying I was being dramatic, looking for an argument. He acted like it was no big deal, but I don't think it's unreasonable to be protective of our kids' privacy, especially in today's world. Now I'm left feeling stuck and anxious every time they're with him, knowing there's a good chance more pictures will end up online. Any tips on how to approach this? This is tough.
That's really tough because she is absolutely right.
Okay, go for it. Yeah. What do you think?
So
hearing
this is like the kids can't consent and aren't being asked.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to it.
It's a complicated one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So the first part is that the kids can't consent and that in future years they might be really unhappy to have a lot of this stuff shared. I mean, I would not like my photos from when I was young to be spread everywhere online.
Oh my God, me neither.
And especially that many people seeing them. The fact that she's got so many followers means she doesn't know her followers. Like if she was friends with 100 people that she knew, that's a little different. But the fact that she doesn't know her followers. So we know that kids' photos are put online and pedophiles go and create whole databases of them. And they can be quite innocent photographs.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. That's not how they're necessarily being used. If you look on somewhere like TikTok at the amount of saves of videos of kids and who is saving them.
Oh, seriously.
It is disgusting. And there are some parents who clearly know on TikTok and aren't doing anything about it. There's some who are unaware and should know better. But this woman is... Well, it's not so much the woman, it's the husband and the father of the children has been made aware that there's an issue with consent and privacy and is choosing not to do anything about it. And I think that's really upsetting for the poor mother of the kids. Because she's right. You don't want your kids' images out there. There's been a lot of stories where kids will say, somebody came up to me on the street and they recognized me. And a lot of the times the kids' uniforms will be visible so people know where they go to school. And they know where they live.
And Ireland's so small. Assuming this person is in Ireland, it is very
small. So I think it's hugely problematic on that level. So there's two things. You've got consent, the kids' discomfort with it in future. You've got what those images might potentially be used for and who's seeing them. So there's huge issues there. And then there's just the boundary issue where one parent is not listening to the concerns of another parent, which I think is another relationship problem more so than a digital problem. But yeah, it's a big issue.
It is. And as you said, there's so many layers to that because there is, as you said, there's, I suppose, the risk of when you put a picture online publicly, it's no longer yours, basically. Anyone can probably see it. Anyone can share it, download it. And although, you know, I suppose we don't want to live in a world where we're always assuming the worst and fearing the worst. At the same time, we have to be realistic.
And careful.
And careful. And what would scare me is that if you look at like, okay, what age am I? I'm 32. So I started using social media at 17-ish. Yeah. Maybe young Bebo was before that. But Facebook, I'm just going to say Facebook because I think Bebo doesn't exist, or I don't know. It's probably gone.
Very much not,
into the ether, hopefully. Like even how much online life has changed from in my lifetime, from 17 to 32. It's a whole other world. I still go back and delete stuff that I'm mortified about. They come up in my memories. Then you're looking at kids these days who might have their lives kind of documented from a really young age, and the parents might be coming from a place where just their children are so integral to their lives and they just want to share and they just aren't thinking it through sometimes. And my concern is, like you said at the beginning, right, if they turn around in, I don't know, let's say those children turn around when they're 18 and they say, I want you to delete every picture of me you've ever put up. You're not going to be able to do that. Like, as in, it's out of your hands now. Yeah. So they'll have images and videos of them, God knows where, even if it's not in bad places.
No, even just if it's not,
out there, it's like they don't have ownership over their videos and images. And that's what I think probably worries me, that I think we might have a lot of angry.
Well, we're certainly seeing like the earliest mom influencers.
Okay, tell me.
The kids of those influencers are now grown up.
Yeah.
And are, a lot of them, extremely unhappy about what was put out there, the personal stuff, doctor's appointments, medical information, their first period. All of this kind of stuff that's deeply personal and that you can choose to share if you want to, but that most young people don't really want shared.
No.
Like, most young people are kind of aware of privacy and embarrassment and they don't want too many people knowing everything about them. And they certainly don't want strangers knowing everything about them. And a lot of them aren't aware when they're quite young, like 5 and 8. They don't really understand the reach of those kind of images. So even asking for their consent,
it's not valid.
Like, it's very hard to visualize 2,000 people seeing your photograph.
No, I can't even imagine. I'm an adult with my own account. I sometimes get shocked when people recognize me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, you actually see my stuff.
It's so weird. Yeah. So it's upsetting because I know that a lot of kids will be unhappy with it later. Now, there'll be some who aren't.
Who aren't, of course.
But you have to kind of be careful about it. One of the things I find really fascinating is a lot of people will talk about kids are sharing everything about themselves and they're not aware of what they're putting online. And then the parents are sharing this stuff about their kids, or their parents' profile picture is their kids and not themselves, because they're like, oh, I don't like to have myself online too much. And it's like, you've got your kids as your profile picture. There's somehow a disconnect, I think, for a lot of people between what they put online about their kids and about themselves. Yeah. And a lot of people are very good. A lot of people are very private, and often family and friends can get upset about not seeing pictures.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure to share stuff. And I think within a family private WhatsApp group, sharing some pictures, stuff like that, absolutely fine.
Oh, 100%.
Because families are spread everywhere. There's
actually apps specifically you can get that like are... they're not social media, but they're kind of. I could snap a picture of my. I was going to say a child, which sounds very like a random child. If I had a child, snap a picture and upload it, but only literally 20 people can see it, like my immediate family, and they can. I know it's another app to be downloading, but there is a way.
There are ways to share.
Maybe without putting it like up on especially a big account, especially a public account. There's. I think there's a spectrum here, isn't there?
Oh, there is.
On one end, you have parents who are actively exploiting their kids. You know that awful case of Ruby Franke in the States. Who was essentially abusing her kids and is now in prison, I believe. And that's the worst. That's kind of when it goes to the worst extreme. And then on the other end, we might just have parents who like adore their kids and just have never really maybe thought this through much. And, you know, because I'm really conscious we probably have a lot of parents listening. So we're not shaming anyone at all or saying you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. I suppose this is just coming from maybe a new perspective or a different perspective. Because we're not emotionally involved with your kids. So we can say, yes, they're lovely, they're fabulous, but we see kind of the other side of it, I guess.
And I think like on that spectrum, if you are friends with like a couple hundred people and you know them, you know everyone you're friends with, and you have a private account and you sometimes put your kids up on your stories or your grid, that's absolutely fine.
I think so.
That's fine. Once they're not naked in the bath or it's something embarrassing or that they would hate when they get older. So just regular nice photos. First day of school with preferably the logos of the school cut out, things like that. Just being a little bit careful. That's absolutely fine. I know loads of people who do that. That's grand.
Yeah.
It's the exploiting your kids for content. Like when you think about child labor, people don't think about Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers.
Oh my God.
There's child labor laws in America anyway for child actors. I'm sure there are here too. I'm not 100% sure what they are. But child actors are protected. You can only work so many hours. You have to be in school. There's all sorts of stuff. But mommy influencers, there's no laws around how much their children can work. And a lot of them are using their kids for content all day.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really, really problematic. So that's one very far end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Which is quite different to a normal parent sharing a couple of photos of their kids.
Yeah.
But even the thing about like kids in the bath, you'd be amazed how many people share photos of their little kid naked in the bath.
Because they see it probably, again, I'm just trying to see the kind of like
as like really
as
cute.
a sweet, lovely moment, and it's bath time, and they just, you know, think that, oh, it's funny, and it's, you know,
and
whatever.
Like they're in the kitchen sink, and it's like we all have photos of ourselves in the kitchen sink when we were young, and it's like carrying on this tradition. And it's like, it's lovely. Do not put it online.
Yeah, it's just,
do not put it online.
Especially with, and again, this is your area, the advancement of
AI and deep fakes and everything like that.
Deep fakes. And for anyone that is listening doesn't know what deep fakes are, like from my understanding, they're basically when people can take your face from photos you put online and then basically kind of put it onto the body of someone who might be having sex or might be being abused. You know, that you can make all kinds of horrendous content.
Absolutely awful. And it's getting more and easier to do it. There's apps that allow it to happen now, and it's
terrifying. And so, okay, there is a spectrum there, absolutely. And just to say as well, on even consent, you kind of touched on this. Yeah, from where I'm sitting, to be honest, I don't believe a child can consent.
No, they can't. That's why we have like statutory rape, because they cannot consent until they're 18.
And even if you say, oh, but they're growing up in a different age, they're growing up in it doesn't matter, they're 5 and they're 8 or whatever age they are. They literally don't have the capacity to actually understand maybe the consequences that could happen. And it's very, because when I talk about consent education, consent isn't just something we speak about with kids, we model it. That's actually how they learn. And if you're trying as a parent then to turn around and say, will you ever get off your phone, you know, when they're 16 and they're glued to it, and they're like, excuse me, you were sharing me at 8. You had your phone out all the time when I was young filming me. That's going to be a really difficult dynamic, like, isn't it? So it's, as you said, it's a spectrum. I think it's just thinking about, you know, what's the worst that could happen? How likely is it to happen? How can I prevent that from happening? Better to be safe than sorry. And I think even if you want, because I do think there is a space for influencers who are moms and that is their thing that they want to talk about. But I think you can share anecdotes and share pictures, but just blur out their faces and just change details so that, like that, in that scenario, I just hate that poor child threw up after getting, because that I used to work in Claire's Accessories, that used to happen. I know I used to pierce child's ears when I look back. I know, I'm not proud of it. I just saw it as part of my job. I was like, okay. You know, just, it can happen. You just, some children are really squeamish and they just get a shock. And that's a really, like, that child's probably going to be really, like, embarrassed by that. I'm not going to say traumatized, but, like, you know, wasn't a good experience, probably embarrassed, probably.
You'd prefer to kind of forget about it rather than have it immortalized.
Not to have it online. And then, like, it's not fair again. Because, I just think that's crossing a line specifically as well.
Yeah, it is. I get very upset seeing parents putting up their kids being very upset.
I do too,
That is a
yeah.
moment where your kid needs you to comfort them, not to take pictures and exploit them online.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think there's lots of ways of even showing your kids. Like,
100%.
I
Yeah.
follow friends and acquaintances who have kids, and they'll always show the back of their kid, like running
Yeah.
down the street, something like that.
Yeah.
And they don't really ever show their face. And they may not have loads of followers, but that's a really nice way of doing it. Or putting an emoji over their face and things like that can help as well. So there's lots of ways of doing it. It's not saying you never share your kids
Of course
at all.
not, because again, they're a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
You know.
But, you know, if you take a moment to think, would I have liked this
Yes.
shared about me?
Yeah.
Then I think that's a good way to look at it.
Exactly. And think about the future conversations you might have to have with your child and how you're
Yeah.
going to navigate them, because that is actually important to
Yeah.
consider. And we can't say, oh, I didn't know any better, because actually people are talking about this a lot.
I know.
So,
And we're
you know,
adults.
yeah. And you know, there is loads of, as you said, you know, when you mentioned the earliest kids now of
Yes.
mom to there's like, those articles are out there. I've read them.
Yeah.
I've seen them. There's probably documentaries out
Yeah.
there as well. So just have a think about it. I think as well, just one more point, and then I'm going to finish off this dilemma. Something else I've been thinking about recently is that when you post your child, let's say online, you're tying their identity to yours publicly. And now there's loads of different scenarios that won't happen, but there are some that could. And if you, I don't know, if you mess up publicly, if someone in your family commits a crime and is
Yeah.
convicted, if someone, I don't know, it could be anything, if someone gets cancelled, especially if
Yeah.
you have a public figure, your child is going to
known.
be tied publicly to you and your image.
Yeah.
And I know, again, that seems maybe a bit extreme, but that's the lens I'm looking at it through as well, that, you know, obviously they're your child, they're tied to you, but online is a different...
It's quite different in the public eye.
Yeah, and how do they escape that and separate your kind? That's why I'm shocked that so many celebrities like
don't protect their
fully
kids
have
more.
their kids on their shows and their faces and their... Because they have the privilege and the choice to, like, those kids are fine.
Yeah.
They'll be able to grow up. They'll have money.
Yes.
They don't need to be 8 years old recording songs or whatever, do they?
No, I
don't
know.
know.
I don't think so. And again, like, there are child actors, there are child stars, there's
course,
child musicians,
yeah.
and they really want to be out there doing stuff.
I
That's
know.
a little different.
That's a whole other conversation, I think.
Like, there's...
yeah.
I think there's boundaries to be set. There's a fine line between exploitation and encouragement and allowing a kid to do something. But like, one of my friends, a very good friend of mine, her kids are super creative. And her young lad creates videos that are amazing, absolutely brilliant. But he's got a YouTube account where he can put up his animations.
Okay.
But he's made live action ones now with his sisters and himself and friends in it. And she's not letting him put those up because they are 11, 12, 13. Like, they're too young to be in the public eye. Even though they're absolutely brilliant. And part of me is like, oh, it'd be so amazing for people to see how brilliant this is. But the people who need to see it, his teachers, his friends and family and stuff, are all seeing it. He can put it up later. And she's right to protect them. Because if it went viral, which it could, because it's really fun and it's really creative.
Of course. Yeah.
If 1 million people look at it and can see where they live and can see their faces and stuff, that could potentially be a problem.
Yeah.
You know, there's not that many terrible people out there. But let's say there's 1 in 100,000. And if you've got 1 million people following you, then that's 10 people.
And there's probably more than 1 in 100,000, let's be real. When we look at the stats, like, it's scary.
It is.
A good, again, metaphor, analogy, don't know what the word is, but I came across recently was the kind of photo album test. So if you wouldn't hand these photos in a photo album to your 3,000 followers, don't post them.
Yeah.
Like, if you wouldn't physically hand out the photo. Now, I don't mean like, you're like, I don't have time to walk down the street handing out photos, Grace. But like, metaphorically, if you wouldn't post them or hand them or, you know, whatever, then probably
It's
don't.
not a great idea.
Because it's essentially what's happening. Okay, interesting. So with that scenario, because but that's okay, because I think that's a good, I think this is genuinely a really timely topic.
Yeah.
And again, it's not us saying, don't do this, don't do that. It's just our perspective, and each parent has to make their own decision. But just, you know, I think a lot more thought has to go into it for some. With this her ex's new partner, there's two things that's coming to mind. It's one, has she tried to talk to her directly? Because all I'm hearing is that she's talking to him, and I don't know what the dynamics are. Obviously,
and
she
it might
should be able
difficult.
to talk to him.
Yeah. But if she's spending that much time with her kids, she should be able to talk to her as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's really difficult, and co-parenting in a way
immensely complex.
Oh my, I don't know how I think I would lose my mind in that situation particularly. I'd be like, oh my God, what are you doing? But I suppose you kind of have to try and keep things civil. I think the way I would approach it is approaching from a place of, I love that you spend so much time with the kids. I love that you enjoy it and they enjoy it and you're going on adventures, and that's great. But these are just my concerns, and they come from a place purely of love and protection, not criticism. And I'd even be as sweet as you can, even if you're annoyed, because you don't want to create this huge divide. Yeah. And don't want the kids in the middle of it either. Yeah. What do you think? That's how I would generally approach.
That would be the same for me. I would try and talk directly to the person who was doing it if I could, if that dynamic was okay. With the husband, I'd probably be a little stronger.
I would too.
I suspect maybe like lack of respect of boundaries or requests might have been part of the reason why it's an ex-husband now.
Yeah, and there's other stuff going on obviously in that dynamic. Yeah.
I might go from a research-based perspective, like articles that talk about where these photos end up, worst case scenario ones.
Yeah.
Because
that keeps it factual and non-personal.
Keeps it factual, non-emotive. It's like, look, this is what our kids are potentially exposed to. It may not happen if they're lucky, but it might. Yeah. And with deep fakes and AI and stuff like that. But even aside from the deep fakes and AI, that can happen, yes. But a lot of these images are ending up in places that you don't want them to end up.
I know they are.
So it's just, that's something a lot of parents don't think when they post. They don't think someone like that will be looking at theirs because it's their followers.
Yeah.
But it does happen.
Of course.
And especially if an account starts to post pictures of kids, they will get those kind of followers. Yeah. And it's awful and unfortunate, but it does happen, and people do need to be aware of it and need to be careful of it. It's one of the worst aspects of the internet.
It is. And I think it's unique, and that involves children because, you could say, I don't know, we covered a scenario in season 1 about joining OnlyFans, and we just talked a little bit about the boyfriend was concerned, and I was like, look, there genuinely might be some safety concerns over, unfortunately, if a woman is openly, sexual and putting her body online. By the way, I'm all for it if you're doing that out of your own, for your own reasons, and you're in the place of power, you're not under pressure or anything like that. But of course you're going to attract creeps. Like it's just I don't put naked pictures up, and just because I have the word sex in my bio, I get creepy men in my followers and DMs.
The creepiest message I've ever gotten was when I tried to sell a bag on Facebook Marketplace. Like there are no restrictions on where the creeps go online.
Oh no, there's no. It's just
LinkedIn,
open season.
Facebook Marketplace, like anywhere, everywhere. Everywhere there are men and women, there will be creepy messages. So it will only get amplified if there's any sort of sexual content at all or hint of it.
Yeah, but being an adult, that's a risk you understand and that you're undertaking. A child cannot do that. No. And look, I think that's if we were to do a bottom line, I think that's it. They really can't consent. Yeah. That's that dilemma. It is a messy one.
It is. It's a difficult one. Yeah.
And it's emotive, obviously, when it's involving someone's kids,
Yeah.
Lovely listeners, I want to tell you about the Jazz Rabbit Vibrator from Romp by Womanizer, which takes that world famous rabbit vibe to the next level. So it still offers the iconic double stimulation that we love, but with a sleek modern design. It has double layered soft silicone, which feels gorgeous. It has extra grooves built in to reach all those sensitive spots, and the powerful vibrations make it a rabbit to remember. Now, don't forget, the winner of our Season 2 competition will be announced next week in our 18th of December episode, the final episode of the season. That means you still have time to win this rabbit and every other toy we featured this season, a Play Blue collection worth over €300. Just check the episode description for details on how to enter. It's so easy. And winning this incredible prize might just make Christmas and you come early. And if you can't wait and want to hop on this rabbit ASAP, get 10% off any sexy bits on playblue.ie with discount code GRACE10. Enjoy! Hi, Grace Alice. I've been using dating apps for the last few years, but to be honest, I'm completely jaded by the whole thing. I swipe, I match, and then nothing. Half the time, women don't even reply, and when they do, it's usually just to say they're open to being friends, which feels like a polite brush off. I'm looking for a real connection, but it seems like every conversation just fizzles out, and I hardly ever actually get to the point of meeting someone in person. It's starting to feel like I'm wasting my time. But at the same time, I feel like dating apps are my only option. It's how everyone seems to meet these days, especially now when socialising in real life is so much harder. I've thought about giving up on the apps, but then I'm worried I'll be left out of the dating game entirely. I just don't understand why things aren't clicking for me. Is there something I'm doing wrong? Or is this just how online dating is? I'm starting to get really disheartened. Should I stick with it or try something else? How do people even meet organically anymore? So there's lots of different questions there. Just when we maybe starting, I don't know, is this a man or woman?
I think it's a man. Well,
it is actually. Sorry, it
was.
says it. I didn't read out at the top. It says okay. Especially now when socializing in real life is so much harder. Is it? Do you think? Is that a post-COVID thing that he's referring to, or just the modern, like?
I mean, if by socializing means trying to meet people that might potentially be a partner, maybe that's more difficult.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's happened with the online dating apps, for some people, not for everybody, is that they... Like, I don't know, you probably remember going out with your friends and everybody be kind of on the lookout, on the hunt a little bit, right? Yeah. And some of your friends might disappear off with somebody and that was kind of normal.
Yeah.
People still do that, of course, but some people don't want to do that anymore. Okay. They're like, well, I'm going out with my friends. I'm going to focus on them.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in like searching and seeking and trying to find someone. Like if we happen to get chatting to people and something happens, then great. But they're not on the hunt. The dating apps are for finding a partner.
Okay.
This is for hanging out with my friends.
Okay.
And so there's less
separation almost.
Yeah, a little bit more separation, which, I mean, I suspect it's not everywhere at all.
Yeah.
But maybe it means some places, and particularly maybe for people who are a little bit older, it's a little bit less meat markety when you go out, which does make it harder in a way to meet somebody.
Yeah.
But it also makes it nicer to go out with your friends.
Yeah, it makes it more. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have made the online dating apps the space for meeting someone. Now, I will say that dating app use has been skyrocketing for years. It went up even more during COVID. It's going down at the moment.
Is it? Okay.
Almost all of them are going down. People are finding it really frustrating. It's not an uncommon experience. And men and women find it frustrating for different reasons. So that guy's experience is not unusual. He is not alone.
Yeah.
And it's partly the way people use it and the way men and women use it. And this is all very heteronormative. Because all the research is unfortunately on heterosexual couples online. Most of it anyway. But this particular research is. But one of the things they find is that, so men swipe right on loads of women, right? So they get a lot of matches. But they only filter after that. Like they'll swipe right most people, even though they're not really that interested, particularly when they've been on there a little while and it's not being very successful. They just start swiping on everybody. And then they'll send loads of messages to women.
Okay.
Like the average or the median first message length was 25 characters in one piece of research I saw. Not words, characters. That's like, hey, how's it going?
Okay.
25% of them were 6 characters or less. That's just like, hello, exclamation mark. So they're sending all these messages. They're matching with all these women. Women, on the other hand, when they join a dating site, tend to get a lot of matches. They get a much higher number of matches and they get a ton of these messages. So guys are lowering their bar and swiping on everybody. Women are raising their bar. They're like, well, I've got 100 responses. I'm going to choose the best ones.
Okay.
And they're only going to reply to a few, the ones who made an effort, not to say, hey.
Not, hey, how are you?
I know.
What am I supposed to say? I know. Like, I'm good, thanks. But like.
I know. Or the ones who never ask questions, don't really reply to questions, start saying sexual stuff really quickly. Like all of those women are just going to switch off and ignore them because they have better options a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So women tend to get kind of overwhelmed by stuff and only reply to a few. So there are so many guys out there just not getting any response. And that's one of the reasons why some guys start sending loads of messages when you don't respond, and they can get angrier and angrier because they're like, they just want to know that somebody's out there. They want a reaction of some kind. Or they'll say, why are you not interested? If you say you're not interested, because they're trying to genuinely, some of them are generally trying to find out.
Yeah.
Some of them are just angry. And like, we know that online dating can make men more angry, which can turn to misogyny. Not all men, obviously, but for a certain subsection that are finding it more difficult. A lot of men don't create profiles that appeal to women. They create profiles that appeal to other men. So if you look at the kind of profile pictures they use, like dead fish, your
Such
car.
a stereotype, holding the dead fish.
I know.
Yeah.
Women are not like, oh my God, that's so hot.
Yeah,
or your fancy car. Like that's a picture for other guys. That is gym pictures. Mostly that's a picture for other guys.
Okay, yeah,
That's not really the female gaze, right? And their first messages are so short, they're not picking up on anything in the woman's profile, talking about it. Now, there are some men, of course, who definitely do this well and maybe still aren't even getting great responses because online dating, it's not a great experience. No. Most people don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Most people do it for a while, get really sick of it, leave for a bit.
Come back.
It's time consuming. Yeah. It's very hard. Like my own research was on how well we're able to tell what somebody's personality is like from their dating profiles, and we're really not.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times when people do get to go on a first date, they have an expectation of what the person's like, and then that doesn't necessarily match the person that shows up. And people automatically think, oh, they lied to me. But it's often not that. It's just that you had a certain amount of information, a small amount of information, and you built a picture in your head, but you filled in a lot of gaps.
Filled in the blanks,
with what you wanted to see. And the longer you were talking to them online, the more likely you are to do that, and you build up this fantasy, and then there's no way they can match up to it.
Yeah.
So it's not a great way to meet people. It is a good way to open up the numbers that you have potential to meet. And dating is a numbers game, online or offline.
Yeah, it is.
It's about meeting enough people that you meet someone you have a spark with, but you don't know until you meet them. And dating cuts us off from people way earlier, perhaps, than in an offline situation where you view someone a bit more holistically. So, for example, you see someone in a bar, you think they're cute, something about their energy, the way they're laughing with their friends is cute. And you get chatting to them, and like an hour into the chat, you find out that they're like super into, like they go to Comic-Con, they're super into comics and stuff. And you're like, oh, that's cute. Like they're cute. I like them. But you might have seen their dating profile and maybe their static image isn't as cute as how they act and move and are funny in real life. And you see that they're into comics and you're like, oh, no, that's childish. I don't like that.
Yeah, so it's nearly the whole package in person.
Yeah, you get the vibes of a person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it all adds up to the energy that they give off rather than picture, profile. But you're kind of nearly tick, 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 you know.
Yeah. So really what you're doing with dating is just filtering through, like you're looking to eliminate red flags.
Yes.
That's
what are some red flags, do you think? I mean, there's probably
it's very
a lot,
individual.
But
but there are some really obvious ones, like open misogyny, open negativity in a dating profile, big red flags.
Yeah.
Saying what I don't want instead of saying what you do want. A list of all the things you don't want.
Or do you know when people use language, like sometimes I'll hear, I like a woman who looks after herself. I'm like, thin.
Yeah, thin.
Go to that's what you're getting at. Like that's 100%. You don't care if I drink. You just want me to have a gym body. Do you know what I mean? It's like say what you mean.
And then all the pictures of them
healthy,
in a pub.
Yeah. So that's that would annoy me.
There are
personally.
coded things, and I think some people don't notice those and don't pick up on them. For some people, like for me, it would be something like smoking or taking drugs. Not really interested. For other people, they don't care about that.
Yeah.
Some of them will be based on your own personal past experiences.
Of course.
Where maybe you met somebody who said something and you really didn't like them, or they were awful. And this person saying something similar, you're like, nope.
And you're getting,
You're just picking up on that vibe, and maybe they aren't like that, but you're like, no,
you're
did that once, not doing it again.
Yeah.
But the main one I think that most people respond negatively to is negativity in a profile.
Okay.
Whether that's, I hate people who do this, I hate having to write this, I don't like people, I'm not looking for XYZ, all of that stuff's just not great. Like you want to put forward something that is you and that is honest, but is positive as well. Like, what are the good things about you? And you can jokingly refer to something that maybe isn't so great about you.
Of course.
but like in a very, very light way and not like a core trauma, preferably.
Yeah.
Like this is the first impression people are getting. It's very light, very small. They're going to build a whole world around it based on their personal experience and background. You've no control over that. No matter how well you craft it, you can't control what somebody else brings to how they read it.
No.
But you can help yourself by getting your friends and family to read your profile and see what they're picking up. Does it feel like you?
Yeah.
A lot of women are more likely to do that. Men are less likely to do that. And I think men could really do with some help on that sometimes.
Okay, yeah.
Same with the photos. Having your friends or family that you trust look at what photos you're choosing to use. So like, don't make your main profile picture one with sunglasses or with other people in it.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, isn't it? Because then you're trying to figure out
what do they
what's
actually
the
look like?
story,
Because eyes say a lot about somebody. We pick up a lot from photographs.
Yeah.
You don't be guessing which person is it in the photograph. Putting a photo up with kids, I wouldn't do that in a dating profile for the kids' safety, but also it's not the place. You can talk about having kids.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put your kid's photo in it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that. Like there's some green flags where people are more positive. They put photographs that are clearly them and a range of photographs. I think one of the things to do, and one of the things that results in better conversations, is putting up photographs of the things that you've said you're interested in. So if you're saying like, I'm like really outdoorsy, like I love kayaking and mountain climbing, and the only photograph of you is a gym selfie.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that you like doing this stuff. You must have some photographs of you doing the things you like, or if you don't, get some.
Yeah. Pictures with dogs.
Pictures with dogs or cats for me.
Yeah. Fair.
Animals generally, like it's a good sign.
Yeah.
But yeah, like natural pictures of you doing stuff that somebody else has taken. If every photograph's a selfie, I would think, do they not have any friends who can take a picture of them?
Yeah.
So there's like you can we read a lot into the little bits of information we have because it's all we have. And women in particular read a lot into the information they have because, first of all, it's evolutionary. We tend to prefer to find out more about a partner before we meet them because potentially we could have children with them. We want to know more about whether they'll be a provider, all that kind of evolutionary stuff.
Yeah.
It's less about that nowadays than, is this person going to be a serial killer?
Yeah.
Is my safety going to be okay
Particularly for
if
women,
I meet them?
Like that's what they're going to be.
Yeah. So if your
100%,
photographs all have sunglasses on and they're all selfies and you have no friends in them or taking them and it's only photos in a mirror, then it's like, that vibe doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're going to be a safe person.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's something I would have picked up on before as well. And with this writer, like I'm wondering what's happening. So matching, talking, fizzling out.
Yeah.
We don't know. See, again, there's blanks there that we don't really know. Is he actually actively asking them on dates?
Or is he asking them about themselves? What's he talking to them about?
Yeah. It is kind of, that's the thing, there's no easy or quick answers to this because as you said, it is kind of a numbers game. I'm one of those really people kind of, what's the word? People will hate me for saying this who are in the same scenario, but I was extremely picky. I was on Tinder and I just had been out of a relationship and the relationship was great. It was good, but it ended kind of not great. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of upping the standards now for this one. I'm looking for certain things. And I'm not joking when I say I was swiping left. I'd say 100 at a time before I do one right. And that's not me being like, I'm too good for everyone. I was just being hyper. I was being way too picky.
Yeah.
But the one person I swiped with, I'm with now for 5 years. So it's luck as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think having an understanding of what you're looking for. And I don't mean like...
That was too picky of me now, to be fair.
No,
somewhere in the middle.
When I say having a list of what you're looking for, I don't mean he has to be blonde and have blue eyes and be 6'2" and in finance.
Trust fund.
Trust fund. But more a list of the things that you know you want in a relationship. Like I want someone who's a really good communicator. I want someone who is warm and friendly around people and who will like enjoy being around my family, who's respectful, who respects boundaries, who can talk about like those kinds of things. I think always it's the same with like going for a job, going for anything, knowing what you want out of that helps you narrow things down in a way that makes sense rather than just going on photos. Because one thing that happens with online dating is the more you scroll, like we make our best decisions when we have like 6 to 8 choices.
Okay.
Yeah. So the more choices you have, the more you regret the decisions that you've made. The bits of the choices you had to leave behind. So maybe this one person you've chosen doesn't have all those bits that all those other people had. They're almost perfect, but this person was like really into this thing that I like and this person isn't. And you think about those things that you left behind. So this is the same in online shopping and any kind of decisions.
I was just about to say, it's
very
like we're
similar.
products,
yes,
isn't it?
Yeah. And people get into a shopping mentality with online dating. And so that can be a problem. So one of the things that happens when you're swiping in online dating, the more you go through profiles, and I think it happens, if I remember correctly, around somewhere 25 or 30, the 30th profile, you start to get pickier and pickier and pickier.
Okay.
Because you're like, oh, but there's so many more to go. So maybe the perfect one is coming. And so you get pickier and you've seen all the bits of options.
That's
so it
interesting.
makes us more critical. It makes us more picky. It puts us in that shopping mentality. And a lot of people don't like how they start to judge people like a product and how they feel themselves like they're a commodity and they have to put forward their marketable aspects.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that people don't enjoy, even if they don't realize that's what's happening. But people do talk about not enjoying that in online dating.
Yeah. I think for this person, because he sounds so frustrated and jaded, I think it might be time for a break. Because if you, and I empathize with that and that feeling jaded, and most people who've used online apps have been there. I know I've been there before. And my thing was like, we need a separate casual sex app because just that's what I was looking for on Tinder. And that seemed to be this... men seem to receive this as, oh, I can like be a dick, basically, you know, or if she's up for anything. I'm like, no, I just don't want a relationship right now. So we need a whole other app for that. But I was getting jaded with that. So, you know, we have to be very clear about what we're looking for as well. That's the other thing.
It's very hard for women to say that they're looking for casual sex on those apps because they do get that reaction.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to like allude to it.
Yeah. Not looking for anything serious.
Yeah, but it's really difficult. Women have talked in the research about how difficult that is.
It's really annoying. Yeah. But if he's in that place of being jaded and frustrated, I think that's going to be coming across and it's going to be repelling people because, you know, sometimes you see, I'm not on dating apps right now, but my friends send me a lot of stuff and, you know, no time wasters and this. And I'm like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but you're giving off this like, this kind of maybe intolerant or impatient or frustrated energy that you need to kind of maybe deal with, get off the app, deal with that, take a break, maybe come back fresh. As you said, maybe have people have a look at your profile. Like, I think there are actually dating coaches. Like, I'm a sex and intimacy coach. Now, I would be happy to look at people's, if they want to share, like in a session, a paid session. Don't start sending me stuff. Where we go through it.
You really don't want people sending you their profiles.
No, I don't. I can only imagine. But, you know, even like there's no shame in that, getting a bit of help, insight from a professional. I've helped people set up dating profiles in my sessions of all ages. And, you know, his question about meeting people organically, again, I wish I could just say, okay, so you need to be in the square at 8 o'clock in this town, because there is no straight answer.
There isn't.
People literally meet, it's in the word organically. You know, maybe it is out and about and parties or clubs, whatever, parties and clubs. I sound like I never leave the house. The way I said that, I sound like 80
I
years
never
old.
leave the house.
But I don't leave the house. Like clubs or out and about, maybe activities like interests.
Yeah, that tends to be a tricky one because I have said that to people before, but then people often, not always, of course, but often have gendered activities. So women will go to dancing classes and it's all women.
It's all women.
And men will go do something else and it's all men. And like, it's a tricky one.
It is. And there is no straightforward answer, but even just having the break maybe for a while can help. Ask your friends if you can to set you up on a few blind dates. Like even just... I know, see, I'm saying it now. I'm like, oh, just for fun. And that person will be like, fuck's sake, like I'm...
And it can make relationships difficult. So you have to be careful with that one because someone sets you up with someone and you're like, what the hell? Why did you think I'd be interested in them? Or the first date doesn't go well and then there's like friction and stuff. So that can be a tricky one.
Yeah,
it's difficult. It is really difficult. I think sometimes stuff like speed dating events can be useful because at least you're getting to meet people in real life.
Yeah.
There are like kind of less speed dating and more like mingling, singles mingle events and stuff like that. That could be useful, I think, as well. There are a few agencies out there that are actually matchmaking agencies if you have a little bit more money. Which I think could potentially be useful as well. But I do think taking a break is definitely a good idea. People need to get off the apps every now and then. Like as soon as you find yourself being jaded, get off the apps for a bit. And get like fresh in your mind again before you go back.
And probably the research probably supports
it totally
that.
does. People are on and off them all the time. Because it's not a lot of fun. So there's been some research into trying to find ways to make it more enjoyable to get to know somebody on there and to make it a better way of getting, because it's a terrible way of getting to know somebody. And they've tried stuff like playing an online game together, which increases like social liking. So even if when you meet, you're not romantically attracted, you like each other more because you've actually had a kind of a natural way of getting to know each other.
Okay.
The same, which is why a lot of people actually meet through online games. Like a lot of relationships start in online games. They start in loads of places online.
Okay.
Online community forums where you're interested in the same stuff. Online games is a really good one. They've tried having people walk around like a virtual art gallery together. And that works quite well. Again, increases liking, not necessarily romantic liking, because that's a numbers game. That's just whether you've got chemistry or not.
Yeah.
But at least if when you went on a date, you actually quite enjoyed it and you quite liked the person, that would be a major step up from a lot of what's happening now.
100%.
Yeah.
And maybe just to finish on a very general point of, it can feel really disheartening when you feel like everyone else is getting in relationships.
Yeah.
Why isn't it happening for me? And I genuinely, like, I really don't want to minimize that.
Yeah.
But I do want to just say the compare and despair will leave you more jaded, more frustrated, and playing this narrative in your head that's only going to strengthen how you're going to kind of start self-identifying as, I don't know, like unlovable or single forever. There's people who meet their person in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And when I say their person, I'm not saying like, I'm not a soulmate person, but you know, you're who you could have a really long connection, lovely connection with. Yeah. Until it happens, it's not happening. Yeah. So it probably feels like it's not happening for so long. But then when it happens, you'll be like, God, I wish I didn't worry for 35 years about it happening when it did end up. Does that make sense? Like that we can almost get sucked into that. And I get it, because the world is, in ways I go on rants about this sometimes on Instagram, like we prioritize romantic love around all the other types of love, and it really frustrates me. And I did a post recently about the ancient Greeks had like 7 or 8 different words for love. They didn't just use love. They had a different word for friendship love, a different word for self-love, a different word for sexual love. So, and there's value in all of them, but if we don't have that romantic love, it's like we're failing, we're doing something wrong. He mightn't actually be doing it, just mightn't be happening just yet. I know it's frustrating, but some of it can be a mindset.
I think it can. And I think one of the most attractive things about a person is someone who is living their life to the full and is happy. Yeah. And if someone's just spending all their time focused on what they don't have, that's not often attractive. So creating a full life for yourself, getting the most out of the relationships that you do have, I think that's hugely important. And particularly as you get a bit older, I think, you know, from all the discourse I see online from women are getting pickier. Because they have the option to be. You know, we used to have to meet a partner so that we could leave our parents' house. You know, back in the old days, and it's not that long ago. And women used to kind of marry the first man who seemed okay. I know. So that they could get independence. And we don't have to do that anymore. Now we're earning as much as, or not quite as much as because of the pay gap, but we're earning well. We have independent lives. And so we're not willing to settle. We want someone who's going to be good enough for us.
Add value to your life.
Add value, and a lot more women are choosing to stay single rather than just settle for somebody, which is great, I think. But it does, I think there's still a mindset among some men that women should be happy to get a partner and that without them, that we're nothing. And I think that can be quite a problem as well. Like
definitely.
I think men need a little mindset shift on that and realize that they actually need to step up a bit more sometimes.
100%. And I think that's a good change that has happened. And at the same time, there probably is, I feel like sometimes then single women, it's more socially acceptable to celebrate your singledom.
Yes.
You know, so single ladies, like, I'm single, I'm thriving. And we did an episode on this in season 1, that it's totally okay if you hate being single. That's okay. You don't actually have to love being single. But a single man is sometimes, it depends on the man, seen as kind of sad or lonely or alone or dejected. And, you know, again, you can choose not to feed into that narrative and, you know, just... keep the faith.
I know.
Keep the faith.
But it's difficult.
It is.
And
so,
I feel bad I'm very glad that I am not online dating now, because I researched it. And it's not great.
I know.
But it does, like, it's still the number one way for people to meet a long-term partner. So it does work.
It's worth,
It's
just maybe take breaks and bit by bit. Not, sometimes you just need to step away for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no straight answers, but we've given hopefully lots of food for thought. Do you want to give any information about where people can find you? I know I see you on Ireland AM a lot. You do a lot of TV bits.
I'm on there a fair bit, and I love doing that. I love doing podcasts, obviously. I'm hoping my own podcast will be starting soon with a colleague of mine, Dr. Liam Challoner. But you can always find all the latest stuff that I'm doing on my website, which is nicolafoxhamilton.com, or on Instagram. I think it's at Nicola FH on Instagram, I'm pretty sure. I do have a profile on Twitter. I don't really use it anymore because it's a hellhole now, but it's a shame. Yeah. But that's where you can find me.
Great. Thanks so much, Nicola. Thank you. Thank you very much to Playblue.ie, sponsor of the G-Spot podcast. Don't forget to check out the episode notes to enter our super exciting competition and be in with the chance of winning all of my season 2 toy recommendations. Good luck.